Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shivas Thakur ki jai. Jai, great warriors. I hope you're all well. Our group has shrunk, and hopefully this is like the core unit. It's not going to shrink anymore. Well, anyway, if it does, I guess we, Madhavendra and I, have to practice the karma nivadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana verse that, you have the right to perform your prescribed duties, but you're not entitled to the fruit of action. But I hope we can keep it like this. It's nice. It's just natural. The attrition rate is always there, and it's all good. So, just a few before we go into the actual nitty gritty. Just in terms of homeworks, I think there's a couple of you who didn't turn in your homework, and a couple of you who turned in, after the Saturday afternoon deadline, which is really hard for me and Madhavendra, because then that leaves us no time to actually look over your answers. So a humble request is that you turn them in like on that Saturday, at latest on Saturday. We try our best to give them to you by Tuesday, or latest at Wednesday morning. That leaves 2 or 3 or 4 days to do it. So please, turn them in really by Saturday at the latest, because then that leaves us at least Sunday morning or Saturday afternoon to look at them. Great. Please unmute yourselves. Ask all to unmute. Cool. Somebody has some feedback. Okay, cool. So let's go to work here. One thing about someone has some. I don't think you hear the echo, right? Dun, dun, dun.
This happens when someone has a double device activated.
When someone has two devices going on. Is that what you said?
Because they echo by themselves.
Are you guilty, Sorel?
I think it was me.
Just see, we could tell by your body language.
I'm like trying to figure it out though. Is this still going on?
Unmute one. Or get out.
Or get out. Get out of here.
Get out and get in. If you couldn't shut it off, get out and get in.
But I don't hear you very loud. Can everybody? Jacob, can you say something?
Yeah, everything sounds good.
Oh, you're the one who's perhaps creating that feedback. And Jyotirmayi, your level, your voice is very low. Like we can.
I have the maximum. Can you hear me?
Not very loud.
Do you want me to put earphones?
I don't know, but we just don't hear you.
Hold, I get the earphones. Maybe it's better.
Okay. So since we're recording this, we better get on to it. So mantra 5, mantra 4 and 5. Yes. Who wants to read mantra 5?
It's okay right now?
Yeah.
Did you see Alicia's...
Sukumari, do you want to
Desire the self inside the small.
Read verse 5?
Yeah, the
getting it up. Under the stairs?
Sanskrit too.
As you like.
Okay. I practice, so shouldn't be too bad. Tat ejate tanai jate tattore tat bantike tat antar asya sarvasya tado sarvasya bahyataha. The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away, but he is very near as well. He is within everything, and yet he is outside of everything.
Thank you. Now, one thing that reminds me, one of you, for your answers, like every one of your answers, you copied and pasted statements from Prabhupada, and there was nothing else. And so I would request you that unless you're asked, okay, what is the specific thing that Prabhupada says, or what does the verse specifically say, unless you're requested to actually give a reference, it would be better to, it's always nice to quote, of course, quote references. And again, if you're asked to quote references, you certainly have to do it. But what I want to hear is like Prabhupada said, we should speak from our own realization. So it's not just a question of finding the answer and just copy and pasting it. And that's I want you to develop the idea in written form. And it doesn't have to be long, it can be short, but a few sentences explaining in your own language what you understand is the answer to the question would be welcome. Okay. So let's unpack this verse here. And that was actually the first question, right? For mantra 5. So what does it mean that he walks and does not walk? One of you answered nicely. Well, I'll put him on the spot. Vignesh gave a very nice answer to that. How does God walk? How does Krishna walk? I mean, with his legs is one answer. When he's on the bank of the Jamuna River, or he's herding the cows and with the cowherd boys, or when he's dancing with the gopis, as described in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, he's using his feet, his legs. Are his legs material or spiritual?
Spiritual.
Right? We all believe this. There's no confusion here, right? Krishna's body is Satchit Ananda. What's the last word?
Vigraha.
Vigraha.
Right, Vigraha. And Jacob, what does Vigraha mean?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Is it form?
Yeah, exactly. So Sat means?
Sat. I know Chit is consciousness. Sat is eternality.
Yeah. Satchit. And
And
Ananda, everybody knows, except for
Bliss.
Golokananda. Priya, she doesn't know what Ananda means.
Yeah.
Ananda means bliss, right? So so God, by definition, according to our beliefs, according to what we say the Bhagavad Gita states and the Bhagavatam says, Krishna or God has a form which is made of Sat, Chit, and Ananda, right? So one way we could just approach this verse is say, yeah, the Lord is a person, and therefore when he walks, like he walks because he has legs. In Goloka Vrindavan or in Gokula, when he appears on earth, he walks, so he's got legs. What's another way to say that, or what's another interpretation or another understanding of the word or the idea that God walks or Krishna walks? What does that mean also?
Krishna lotus.
Jyotirmai?
Maybe because since he's in everything, and in this way, whenever he wants to move, he can move. Whomever moves, actually, he's moving with anyone who's moving because he's everywhere, so he can move whenever he wants.
Good point. So you touched on two things. One is he's everywhere. He's in every atom. As a matter of fact, we know that or at least we believe that Brahman emanates from him. And so since Brahman is all pervading, then he's everywhere. And also, you pointed out nicely, he's the Paramatma, right? Ishvara sarva bhutanam rid deshe Arjuna tishtati. Rid, he's in the heart. Rid means heart. So if somebody's moving, then he's accompanying that soul. And if that soul is moving, then obviously God is also moving along with that soul, right? On the chariot of the body. Good. So how do we understand that he does not move then? Karuna Kishori?
I go on?
Or maybe someone else.
Or maybe because he doesn't need to walk. If he wants to move, he doesn't rely on his ability to walk. He can move in other ways.
But how does he does not walk? What does that mean? Or how does that explain that he does not walk? Because he just doesn't want to?
Because he's fixed.
Yeah.
Because he's what?
I said because he's fixed. Sorry, I forgot I wasn't on mute.
That's cool. So he's fixed in one place. Like where?
In his abode, in Krishna Loka.
Yeah, exactly.
Vrindavan.
Exactly. Right. So he's there and he doesn't have to move, and very well said. Any other addition on that concept that he does not walk? Vignesh, you want to add something?
Since the energy of the Lord is like all pervading in the entire universe, he doesn't need to walk and go to another place. For going to another place would mean he has moved from one point to another, and then he's no more in the one earlier one. So since God is all pervading, in a way we can say that he does not walk, or he need not walk. His energy is all pervasive.
Good point. So next thing, he is far away, but he is near as well. So Jacob G, unpack that one for us.
So in the purport, Prabhupada explains that for a devotee, the Lord is always within reach, and for a non-devotee, that he's very far away simultaneously. And so yeah, he's right there, available to us if we are able to open ourselves up to his mercy. But if we close ourselves off and become illusioned to the fact that he doesn't exist, then he's very, very far away.
Great. So you're relating this concept of near and far away in terms of reciprocity, really, right? Of reciprocity with the jiva, with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if he was nearby, then he would be reciprocate. The reciprocation would be very obvious, and you would be able to perceive it more readily. Whereas if he was far away, then you would think that he's not there, like most atheists do.
What about in terms of literally like distances, like physical distances? Does anyone want to add something about that? The idea of God being far and near in terms of just, meters and miles and kilometers, or yojanas, to use a really large Vedic length. Yojana, I don't know how many miles that is. Someone started?
The Lord is always situated in his own abode, Goloka Vrindavan, which is really very far away.
So how far is Goloka Vrindavan from planet Earth?
It's we don't know exactly, but you have to go through 14 world or something, Chauda Bhuvan.
And then you've got the coverings, right? Like each universe has how many coverings? There's like 10 coverings, right? And each covering is like 10 times larger than the next one. And that's just for one universe, right? One universe is like a tiny little, tiny. And then you've got like all these coverings of the different material elements, right? And then when you get to the Viraja River, then beyond that is it's described as the Brahman. And in the Brahman, there's Vaikuntha planets, right? And then furthest of all is Goloka. So yeah, we're kind of it's gonna take imagine. I mean, that's a stupid joke, but like, probably pay a lot of money to take an Uber to Goloka Vrindavan. And why then, using the same concept of length, like measurements or length, how is Krishna very near as well? How is that understood?
He's very near because he's situated in our heart. He's always with us. He's as Paramatma.
He's within our heart, so he's right there. And isn't he also right within the atom?
Within the atom, yeah.
Within the atom of every atom, so really close. So we've got two things here going on. We've got the close and far in relationship to our consciousness, or in relationship to us in terms of consciousness, far and close in terms of Krishna's reciprocity, how he reciprocates with a soul who wants him or a soul who wants to reject him. And, accordingly, like Prabhupada says, right? He says the devotee of the Lord somewhere, some beautiful, how Prabhupada sometimes has some signature statement in some of his books that are just, it's like a tip, like it's like a Prabhupada classic sentence, you know. So one of them, he says, like, you know, something to the effect that the devotee of the Lord sees God everywhere, but, you know, the atheist sees God nowhere, right? And we'll get to that a little bit further when we talk about the, you know, Madhyamadikari, Uttama and Kanishta the vision of the Uttama Adhikari, right? The Uttama Adhikari. Vignesh, I have to again, you know, congratulate him. In one of his answers, he provided a very famous. Actually, it's not that famous. That's the point. It's a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that not many devotees actually quote, and which Bhakti Charu Swami actually used to quote sometimes. And I remember, you know, hearing it decades ago and noting it down, and so it was a nice breath of fresh air to hear Vignesh quoted. But there's this verse that goes, "Stavar jangam deke na deke tarmurti." What is it? Stavar ishtadev sfurti. I forget the second line. Can you say it, Vignesh?
Yes. It says, Stavara Jangama dekhe na dekhe tara murti sarvatra haya nija ishta deva spurti.
Right. So what's the translation? What's Prabhupada's translation to Kaviraj Goswami's statement there?
He says, the Mahabhagavata, the advanced devotee, certainly sees everything mobile and immobile, but he does not exactly see their forms. Rather, everywhere he immediately sees manifest the form of the Supreme Lord.
So the pure devotee, right, according to Kaviraj Goswami, like, you know, he doesn't really see stabar and jangam. He doesn't see moving and non-moving objects. He doesn't see a house or a moving cat or a car or a tree. What he sees is Shyamasundar, like everywhere. He just sees Shyamasundar everywhere, right? What pastime from the seventh canto? I mean, that's really a giveaway. What pastime from the seventh canto does that remind any of you of?
Prahlad, story of Prahlad.
Yeah, Prahlad Maharaj, exactly. And more specifically, maybe someone else? What in Prahlad and Nrsingadev's pastime can we relate to this idea of seeing God everywhere?
Yeah, it's a Ito Nrsinga Parata, Bahir Nrsinga, Hridaya Nrsinga.
Okay, but in the actual Leela, in the actual...
No, I mean, when you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, when Hiranyakashipu said, where is your God? Is he in this pillar? And he smashed the pillar, and actually God in the form of Nrsingadeva went out of there.
Exactly, that's what I was looking at. Very good. Right, we hear from the seventh canto, Nrsingadev's like, oh yeah, well, where's your God? And Prahlad says, what does Prahlad say? He's like, he's everywhere, daddy. Right? And so he's basically quoting Shri Isopanishad. He's basically saying, you know, he's very near as well. He's, well, as we'll see now, he's within everything. He's within everything. He's very near as well. I mean, these things are related to each other. And then Hiranyakashipu says, oh yeah, is he in this pillar? And Prahlad, according to the text, says, yeah, of course he's in this pillar. And then Hiranyakashipu smashes the pillar, and lo and behold, comes out Nrsingadev. Right? So what's the third thing here? That he is, I think we covered the second point, that he's very near, he's very far away. And so he is within everything and he is outside of everything. So I think Gokulananda Priya quoted the perfect verse here. Can someone repeat that verse that she quoted, that we well, at least in temples we sing every day? Sorel.
I think she said Bahir Narsimha Hridaye. I say it badly.
Yeah, no, very good.
And then, yeah.
So what does that mean?
That he is, Bahir means, I forget what Bahir means, but Hridaye means in the heart.
Right.
So Bahir means he's everywhere and within the heart, or I'm not sure.
Bahir literally means outside, or
Outside.
you know, there's this famous verse about the soul rejecting Krishna. And it goes like Bahir, what is it? Krishna Bahir Mukha Bhagavan Chakare. Mukha means what? Mukha means
Mouth.
A face.
Face.
Like what did Prabhupada's family members call him when he was a child? Kashori. Kashori. You guys have to know this for final exam. But it's kind of cute. The nickname of Prabhupada when he was a child.
Muka.
What?
Cow face? I don't know.
Kachori Muki.
Yes, Karuna Kishori said it. What did Prabhupada supposedly really like to eat when he was a kid?
Kachori.
Kachori. So someone called him Kachori Muki, like Kachori face, because he stuffed his face with kachoris, right? Kachori Muka. So there's verse goes, Krishna Bahir, Sorel, so Krishna Bahir Muka. So putting your mukha, your face, away, Bahir, away from Krishna. Krishna Bahir Mukha. So turning your face away or Bahir from Krishna, Bhagavan Shakare, with a desire for bhoga, for enjoying, the material world. Krishna Bahir Mukha, yeah? Bhagavan Shakare, and then Nikatosta Maya Tare Japatiya Dare. As a result of turning one's face away from Krishna, Bahir Mukha, for for material sense gratification, then the soul is being beaten again and again by Maya. Maya just beats the hell out of that soul. Krishna Bahir Mukha Bhagavan Chakare Nikatosto Maya Tare Japatiya Dare. That soul gets all sorts of sufferings inflicted by Maya. So Bahir Nishingo Ridaye Nishingo. So Bahir Nishingo means literally now, Sorel, you should get it.
Turning away from Krishna.
Yeah, but here we're talking. The subject of the verb is Krishna himself.
Or turning away from.
Nishingadev is he's in the heart, but he's also
everywhere.
Yeah, outside.
Outside of the
right, or away from the heart. So that verse, Bahir Nishingo Ridaya Nishingo, illustrates perfectly what we're talking about here, that he's within everything and that he is outside of everything.
Prabhu, what was that verse that you just quoted now?
From the Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Yes, possibly.
Or the one that...
Turning away from Krishna.
Turning away from Krishna.
Okay.
Krishna Bahir Mukha Bhoga Vansha. It's in Chaitanya Charitamrita or in what's it called? No, I'm sorry. It's not in. It's actually in Prabodhananda Sarasvati Thakur's book Prema Vivarta. Here, let me share the screen with you. Here we go. Now, this is a website called Gita Base. I haven't really gone to it, but what I'll do is I'll share it with you in the WhatsApp chat, okay? In the WhatsApp chat, I'll just give you the link so you can look at it later. But yeah, here you go. From Prema Vivarta. Krishna Bahirmukanya Bhagavan Chakare Nikatostamaya Tarijapati Adare. And Prabhupada is paraphrasing here, saying actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the Supreme Enjoyer. When a living entity wants to imitate him, he is given a chance to satisfy his false desire to lord it over material nature. That is the beginning of his downfall. Yeah, we're getting close to the issue of the fall of the jiva, which, anyway, at least for me and a lot of most of my Shiksha gurus is a pretty clear non-issue. But, we don't have to get into it. But yeah, at least.
What's that very clear non-issue?
What?
What is that very clear non-issue?
The debate that the Gaudiya Vaishnavas have about whether the soul was with Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan and fell from Goloka Vrindavan, or has never been in Goloka Vrindavan and is going to Goloka Vrindavan for the first time, really. And so there's two kind of camps. There's those who say the soul never fell from the spiritual world, and those who say that the soul did fall from the spiritual world. So it's kind of a.
Prabhu,
It
I
gets
ask a
annoying.
question about this.
Oh God. Okay, one, and then we'll just answer in 5 minutes, and then or less.
Yeah,
and
it
go back because this is like
has
a
nothing
can
to
of
do.
worms.
I have okay. While I was listening to the Lila where Krishna saved his friends, his co-friends, while Brahma actually put them asleep, and he manifested himself in all these forms for 1 year. I was thinking, what if we actually never left Goloka Vrindavan, but we are there sleeping, and in that sleep, in that dream, we are actually dreaming of being here and having this kind of
that is an explanation that Prabhupada actually gives several times, and I think maybe other acharyas also give. Like when you come out of illusion, when you actually become Krishna conscious again, you realize kind of. I mean, it's a nice analogy. You're like, oh my God, I'm back where I've never left. Yeah. You know the famous singer Gauravani Prabhu?
Mm-hmm.
Who doesn't know him? That Guru Kuli from America who sang many beautiful albums. So anyway, he was a brahmachari for like 6 days in the Los Angeles temple. I chide him about that, but he wore saffron for like 7 days or something. And he was staying at there was an ashram next to the LA temple that was run by Bhakti Vaidurya Madhava Maharaj, who basically left Krishna consciousness since. But anyway, I always remember, like in a conversation we were having, just some talk, like Gauravani, and this is like 1995, 1996, 1996 maybe. And he said, and again, I'm not saying this to spark some more conversation, but you just reminded me of this story. I thought it's cute. Some devotees will say, well, no, that's philosophically incorrect because we never come from Goloka Vrindavan. But anyway, I thought this was a cute story, and it refers to, it draws to what Jyotirmaya is talking about, this idea of waking up. So you're in the spiritual world, you're walking on this path, you see a beautiful flower on the side of the path, and you pick up the flower, and then you're like, wow, this flower would look really beautiful on Krishna's turban. And just then you think, well, wait a second, actually, that flower would look great on me. And just at that moment, boom, you find yourself in the body of Lord Brahma, and you're back down to a human body, and you act, in sinful ways. You find yourself in an animal body. You go all the way down to the Indragopa germ, and then you can't go down anymore. So you gradually, by the laws of nature, go back up to an ant body, a worm body, a plant, and then you're back in a human body, and you meet some devotees of Krishna. You perform the Yuga Dharma, you chant Hare Krishna, you die, and then you're back in that same position with that flower in your hand in Goloka, and you're like, I think it'd look better. It'll look better on Krishna's turban, So, but anyway. Let's go back to our. You had, just so you know, I want to disclose my position. You may not agree with you don't have to agree with your Bhakti Shastri teacher, but I, along with Indradyumna Swami and Brigupati Prabhu and Hridayananda Maharaj, and except for Banu Maharaj, but anyway, all my teachers, and it seems Prabhupada himself very clearly, I believe in that we do come from Goloka Vrindavan. We fall from the spiritual world. So that's my stance. And as Indradyumna Swami once told me, this is a nice way to end the story here. This little mini chapter or parenthesis. I coordinated. This is on the Polish tour 2 summers ago, and I had to go to France to see Bhakti Charu Maharaj actually. And then on my way back, I coordinated my return to Berlin with Indradyumna Maharaj's return from Macedonia or somewhere, where he had been invited to go to attend a gypsy wedding. Him and his adventures, So I coordinated our flight so that I catch a ride with him back to the Polish tour base, which is about a 4-hour drive from Berlin. So in the van, in that blue Mercedes van, it was just me, him, and Guru Kripa Prabhu from Poland, who was driving him. And I'll always remember, I asked him, I said, where do you, what's your position on the fall of the soul? And he said, I believe that we were with Krishna, and I take my authority from Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu, one of his godbrothers, a Prabhupada disciple who translated the Brihad Bhagavatamrita for the BBT, who had a Sanskrit school in Govardhan, and who passed away about 5-6 years ago. And he said, I think he was the most learned scholar in our movement. And even he says that, if you actually look at the Jiva, at the Goswami literature, we do fall from the spiritual world. But then he said this, and this is what the whole point of the story. He said, but anyway, I don't like to talk about it. I'd much rather go out on Sankirtan instead, or go out on Harinam instead of talking, debating about it. So following that instruction, we can go back to our verse at hand here. Let's go to the questions, actually, because this next question I have for you, you guys touched on it, some of you better than others, but I think it's a really, really, really important concept that, and I kind of hammered it twice, the idea of because Prabhupada hammers on it, the idea of inconceivable potencies, right? And even more than just inconceivable, the idea of God having a potency, right? So here's a question. Prabhupada repeatedly speaks of Krishna having inconceivable potencies, or just potencies in general. Forget even the word inconceivable. That's not, the fact that they're inconceivable has to do with, inconceivable one and difference, or they're just, we can't, fathom how amazing Krishna's potencies are. But maybe I shouldn't have put the word in inconceivable, because I may have, confused you. My point is, we operate in a theology, right, where there's this idea that God has potencies. So how is that? Let's talk about this, because this is a really important philosophical point to really grab. Like, remember Madhavendra Puri Prabhu said that the Shri Isopanishad is very much a treatise that equips you to, argue or to defeat Mayavada philosophy, right? It's kind of funny because, like once, like in my 28 years of Krishna consciousness, like I can't even think of once when I actually had a debate, with a Mayavadi. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've been waiting for you for 26 years. Oh, finally, like, okay, let's talk about, the form of God. It's like we live in such a fallen age, even in India, what to speak of the West, where aside maybe for some discussions that you find in Christian circles, with Meister Eckhart, for example, or other sort of Christian mystics who really kind of stress the idea of merging into Christ and becoming Christ. It's not like, it's almost like redundant. I'm not saying we shouldn't study these arguments, but the reality at face value is that 99% of the people you're trying to convince, and ourselves, starting with ourselves, are people who are just trying to control their sex desire, and maybe stop smoking marijuana, and and try to wake up a little early in the, you know what I mean? Like it's so anchored in just basic sense control and sense gratification that the issue of like debating about God having potencies, or the illusion, or is it the Mayavadi versus Vaishnava Siddhanta, is kind of almost kind of out of context, But anyway, we are studying Prabhupada's books, and we should know these arguments. So for the sake of the cause, let's talk about this idea of God having potencies. And before we talk about it, I'll give you a little bit more of a hint. Impersonalists, when I say Mayavadis, say boo. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Mayavadis. Okay, you're more gentlemen and ladies than I thought. That was a test, actually. So the Mayavadis, right? What do they say about this material world? What is this material world in relationship to the divine? And I say the divine because obviously they don't believe in the form of God, so they're not going to even say God, so just the divine. How do the Mayavadis, or the impersonalists, or the Advaita Vedantas see this world in relationship to the divine? Huh?
False.
As an illusion.
Okay, so who said false?
Golokananda.
Okay, and Sorel, you said illusion. Right. That's the right answer. So what does that mean about this world? Does this world then have any sort of substance? I mean, ontologically, no. If it's an illusion, right? Now, how is an illusory world related to God? Like how how does God create an illusory world? Like, if it's illusory, is there really any sort of relationship between the world and the divine? And the answer is no. That's why in the field of language, for example, can maybe someone mute themselves because there is some feedback here? Jacob, thanks. Oh, we still like to see your face. Cool. So in the field of language, which you can say is a material thing, right? Philosophy of language is pretty fascinating. The Mayavadis will say that ultimately language fails to describe reality because language is material, right? And everything material is illusory. And therefore you can't use a material tool to describe transcendence. And so, and therefore, the sort of chiding counter argument of the Vaishnavas, which Prabhupada often said, is like, okay, well then just shut the hell up then. Well, I mean, not the hell up, but like, why are you talking then? Why are you writing books and books of books about how, this whole world is an illusion and blah, 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 when you yourself agree as a premise that language can't explain reality? Then shut the hell up, excuse my French, and go to a cave and meditate and leave us alone if language is illusory, right? It's just the hypocrisy of the impersonalists there. But the point is, just like language, this entire world in which language exists is an illusion. Now, how do Vaishnavas, how does the Bhagavad Gita, how does the Bhagavatam see the material world in relationship to God?
We say
Kulananda?
the world is not false, but it is temporary.
Yeah. And what is it in relationship to Krishna? What is it? It's one of what of Krishna?
Is one of the energy of Krishna.
Yeah, another word for energy is
Prakriti.
Yeah, but
material nature.
We just used the word. The question I raised is a question with one specific word. What is it? It's not, forget inconceivable, but come on, Prabhus.
Potency.
Potency.
Yes, potency, exactly. So this material world, according to Vaishnavas, is a potency of the world. Sorry, is a potency of God. So if God is real, are his potencies real?
Yes.
Who said no? Everybody agrees? Vignesh? You agree, Vignesh Ji, that the potency of Krishna is real, just like Krishna is real?
Yes, Prabhu, it is real.
Yes, it's real. So where am I getting at? I mean, can anyone, before we kind of, bring the rabbit out of the hat here, who can kind of preemptively give the conclusion of where I'm trying to get here?
If his potency is real, so this world also is real, but temporary.
Yes. And what does that make? What does that make Krishna?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
For one thing, you can't have potencies unless you're a person. Because potencies means they're directed by someone. They emanate from. There's an agent that's directing a potency in a certain way, right? So indirectly, it shows us that Krishna is a person. Is that a convincing argument or not so much?
Very good.
It's pretty good. I kind of confused it, or not confused, but I kind of mixed it in with the idea of the world being a reality because God's a reality, and so therefore, but they're all kind of intertwined. If a potency is real, if this world is real, then it must come from a real source. And you could, twist and say, well, actually, it doesn't. Even if this world was a potency of the divine, then the divine could also be impersonal. But then, how do you have an impersonal energy manifest anything? Because as soon as you have a manifesting of anything, of a potency in particular, you got to have volition. You have to have an individual doing it, right? I mean, that's what, like, how can the impersonal Brahman think or become an, okay, here's another question for you guys, just in case in the next 40 years you'll meet a Mayavadi and you'll actually have this discussion, just in case, just to get you ready. Maybe, I don't know, you'll be on some train going from Vrindavan to Mayapur, and you'll stop in Varanasi on the way, and some yogi will go. There are very high chances of this happening to you guys. So what's the answer that Mayavadis often give about why, there's, why we're here in the first place? Like, why our souls, who ultimately are all one, right? But why are souls in the material world in the first place? Jacob.
I believe that for the purpose of Leela.
Exactly. So who does not understand that? I mean, we don't agree. We say that's BS. But that's what the typical impersonal argument will be. Like if you ask, well, okay, if everything's an illusion, how come we're an illusion? How come every soul down here is an illusion? And what's the typical answer? Jacob nailed it. It's just a pastime. It's a divine pastime. So then you ask, okay, well, what do you mean by that? It's a divine pastime. Well, the impersonal Brahman decided to do a Leela, and that's why you got souls, or you got Brahman who manifested in different bodies, and all this down here is just a big divine pastime, including Auschwitz, including Mao Zedong's, murder of millions in China, including Stalin's atrocities, including, child abuse, including, the pain you feel when your tooth is getting ripped out, et cetera, just madness. But anyway, it's just a pastime. So aside from the madness of it, just from a sort of a moral point of view, why would God, what kind of sick God want to, experience all sorts of suffering? Just mad, it's crazy. That's not Ananda. And secondly, forget even that. How can an impersonal energy do anything? You get it? How can an impersonal energy do anything? It's just an energy. It's not even an energy, because energy implies energetic. It's just as Sri Dayananda Maharshi calls it, a cosmic corporate radiance. It's just a radiance. That's all. There's just a radiance. So how the hell does a radiance decide, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to enjoy Leela in the material world, and I'm going to, manifest in all these billions of different bodies, right? So as you can see, impersonalism has a lot of problems. But this idea of potency is really, really important, Prabhus. That's what distinguishes us in one very important way from the impersonalists, in terms of the relationship between, of this world with God, and ultimately kind of with us as well. We accept that God is real, God's a person, and therefore, because he's a person and he's real, he conceptually has the capacity to have potencies, and which are real as well, as opposed to, God is just some impersonal energy, and this world somehow manifests. It's an illusion, but somehow it manifests, and it has no connection whatsoever with God, with the divine. And therefore, all our efforts down here fall short of describing the divine, because even language is material. You get the idea? Okay, cool.
But why the personalists, they accept the Vedas, like Prabhupada said in one purport, they're cheaters because they accept the Vedas, but they think that the Lord is impersonal.
Why do they accept the Vedas?
They accept knowledge. that come from Krishna, but at the
Well,
same time, this is
Shankaracharya, brought back, after Buddha, right? Buddha, this, the acharyas after. Well, why do the Mayavadis accept the Vedas? Well, because they're following Shankaracharya, who established, who just gave an impersonalist understanding of the Vedas. So the Vedas are still a source of authority for the impersonalists. It's just that we believe they just interpret them the wrong way. Remember I told you like occurrences, like really rare occurrences of meeting a Mayavadi. Well, this song. There's one of the last songs that Shankaracharya wrote, which is called Bhaja Govinda. It was Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Muramate. Do you know that one, Vignesh? Yeah?
Yes, bro.
Mudha. What does Mudha mean? Krishna talks Avajanantima Mudha. And Prabhupada used that word a lot. Mudha. What does Mudha mean?
Normally use the word
M-U-D-H-A.
fool.
What?
us.
You normally
Ass?
use the word like fools.
Yeah, fool, ass, fools, and
intelligent.
rascals, right? The Mudha. So what's really interesting is that Shankaracharya, who we believe is Shiva, right? Lord Shiva, who came and purposely, gave an impersonalist interpretation of the Vedas. Shankaracharya, one of his last writings was this famous poem, which he's he's literally giving an order on his deathbed practically. And he's telling his followers, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Mudha Mate, you ass. Worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda. So I'll always remember, I was at the LAX airport. It's maybe around the year 2000. I was in Continental Airlines distributing Bhagavad Gitas. It was just before lunch, so there's like a lull. There's not many passengers flying out or flying in. And then from gate number 4, whatever, comes out, some people from a plane that just landed, including like 6 or 7 full-on Advaita Vedanta Mayavadi sannyasis. They were just, visiting some Mayavadi Hindu temple in LA. And, full-on saffron, like 3, parallel horizontal lines on their forehead. And so they walked by, and in my typical sort of friendly confrontational or joker confrontational way, I said, hey, namaste. And they're like, namaste, as they're walking. So I just repeated what Shankaracharya, their founder, says. So I was like, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda. And then one of them, he chimed in and finished the song, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Mudha Mate. And they just walked off. And I was like, dude, and it just occurred to me that you've got these hundreds of sannyasis, thousands who are Mayavadis, and they themselves sing that song, and they don't get it. They don't get it that well, then we should worship Govinda. Like, hello? I just found it so weird, almost like surrealistic, that this guy was nodding his head as many Indian people do. I don't know, a stereotype, but it's a fact, And he was like, Bhaja Govinda, Mudha Mate. And I was like, well, dude, what are you doing just become a Vaishnava then, idiot. Mudha, duh. Anyway. Okay, let's take a break for a few minutes, because it's time to take a break. And we'll go into verse number 6 when we come back. And we'll speak a little bit about Saguna and Nirguna, because I really do want to make sure everybody understands clearly this Saguna and Nirguna thing. Okay, Prabhus, Prabhvis, and Matajis. Okay, talk to you in 5 minutes. Let's meet up at 5 after, in 5, or let's say in 8, between 5 and 10 minutes from now.